of course. Okay, there. Like that. But it suffered some random damage from the collapse of the North Tower. It collapsed, again, at 5:20. A few small fires here on the north side, on the side opposite the Twin Towers. We have evidence of two small fires. Curiously enough, one of them on the 12th and 13th floor, which was occupied by the Securities and Exchange Commission, which lost thousands of files related to hundreds of cases it was actively pursuing against Wall Street companies like Enron and WorldCom. On the other side, we have lots of smoke. So this is the side that the building, World Trade Center North Tower collapsed. So if this building was to collapse due to fire, we would expect that it would collapse toward its weakest side, which appears to be the smoke-filled side. It would fall over once again. Let's see what it does do. Here's our first view of the collapse of Building 7, narrated by Dan Rather.
Now, here we're going to show you a videotape of the collapse itself. Now we're going to videotape the collapse of this building. Amazing, incredible picture work. For the third time today, reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much of television before. A building was deliberately destroyed by low-place dynamite to knock it down.
Well, Dan has never repeated those comments ever again. So let's see another view from the NBC video. See if maybe it's the video that's wrong. Straight down, smooth, symmetrical, rapid onset, into its own footprint, a perfect implosion. Well, let's see if the owner is aware of what he has to say about Building 7.
World Trade Center 7 had always been considered the starting point for rebuilding. Located north of the slurry wall, 7 had been cleared faster than the rest of the site, and there had been no bodies to recover. Pelted by debris when the North Tower collapsed, 7 burned until late afternoon, allowing occupants to evacuate to safety.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they would be able to contain the fire. I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. In response to this pull. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
How many of you think that Larry meant to pull the fire department? Hell no. Anybody? You guys, come on. Well, that's what his office put out, that he meant to pull the fire department. You say, maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And if you're talking about a group of firemen, you have to decide. Sounds like you already did. But if a building wants to come down rapidly, symmetrically into its own footprint, how do you do that? Well, if it were a fire, it would have to destroy all of the interior columns, 24 of them, within a tenth of a second of each other, and then a fraction of a second later, the exterior columns all at once. There are plenty of examples of failures in controlled demolitions where that is off by a tenth or a fifth of a second, and the building falls over a little bit. This was a perfect controlled demolition. So a fire, you have to ask yourself, can fire accomplish that feat? Now, Building 7 was built over an electrical substation, so it had these huge trusses spanning this substation, and this is all the more evidence to suggest that it must have been a controlled demolition, because would fire, if fire had weakened the columns supporting these massive trusses, it would have even more so tilted over upon falling. One more look from the north side on West Street. clue you in on this one. On the upper right corner of the building, you'll see a series of 7 tiny puffs of black smoke suggesting squids or mistimed explosions. We'll take a look at them in a minute, but here's a pretty. You see him right there on the right? Very, very right. And we'll get a close-up in a minute. Do we have sounds and sights of explosions? Again, we're following right through on your handout. These little red squares can let you know where we are on the handout. Let's listen to this emergency worker on site.
We were watching the building actually was on fire. The top floor of the building on fire, and we heard this sound that sounded like fire thunder. Turned around, we were shocked to see that the building was what looked like there was a shockwave ripping through the building, and the windows all busted out. And horrifying. Then about a second later, the bottom floor caved out, and the building followed after that, and we saw the building crash down over
A second later,
the building actually was on fire. We were watching.
a second later, the bottom floor crashed out. In other words, the building didn't come down and then crash out the floor. It was a sound of a clap of thunder, a shock wave ripping through the building, windows bursting out, and then the building came down. The order is very important as you listen to all of these witnesses, the order of events. This one by New York Police Department Craig Borkner.
And the whole time you're hearing boom, 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 boom. So, I think I know an explosion when I hear it. I was real close to building 7 when it fell down. And
Now I want you, while you're listening to Craig, watch the racing cloud of thick building, enormous pulverized concrete and with pyroclastic clouds racing down the street at 35 miles an hour. Pyro meaning heat, plastic, I don't know what that means. The result that these clouds are produced by heat, it's so hot that because of the thermate, which we'll be getting to, it enfolds on itself, just like any volcano or any explosion.
running away from that sucked. That's one of the things I live with all the time. And I don't know, but that didn't sound like just a building falling down to me while I was running away from it. There's a lot of eyewitness testimony down there hearing explosions. I didn't see any reason for that building to fall down the way it did. And a lot of guys should be saying the same thing.
Well, these buildings are 2 and 3 hour fire protected. They're columns and beams. This is the reason, or one of the reasons, that fires don't destroy high-rise steel frame buildings. They're protected. But that fireproofing only is supposed to last 2 or 3 hours. They're tested to last that long. They're not tested longer than that. Many of them, well, the reason they don't fail is because of the properties of steel. Steel wicks, extremely dense material, wicks away the heat from the source throughout the building. Even after the fireproofing is kind of fried. For instance, this building in Caracas, Venezuela, burned 17 hours over 26 floors, did not collapse. Now these are very large, very long-lasting, and very hot fires, and yet they do not collapse. Los Angeles, 3.5 hours over 5 floors. Philadelphia, 18 hours over 8 floors. New York, 6 hours over a number of floors. And yet these 2 small fires and a lot of smoke on the other side brought this building down in 6.5 seconds after burning during the afternoon. The policemen were pulled away from the fire at 11 o'clock, even though they always go up high rises to put these fires out. It's not a problem for them, that is to say, until 9/11. These buildings, again, follow the path of least resistance when they fall. They fall over, not straight down through those 81 structural columns, which are designed to resist exactly that load for the life of the building. Our government documentation looks like this. We have a group of volunteers from the American Society of Civil Engineers. Now, these are not your average PTA volunteers. These are defense contracting engineers who have $10 million annual contracts with the Department of Defense. So these are not objective analysis whatsoever. And